As long as I can remember, I've been reading comics and I've loved comics. I cannot recall a time when I wasn't. And even as far back as I can remember, I was reading, say, Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck and realizing that Carl Barks, though I didn't know his name, was the best writer and artist of the funny animal comics that I was reading when I was in kindergarten.
It's hard to nail down one, there wasn't one defining thing that, comics in my life. No, so I've been reading comics for 30 years now.
Even though I do have this, this Ivy League graduate education, my passion always was with comics. It was with this medium. It was with the kind of stories that are done in this medium.
I just started coming here, checking the stuff out, and I got hooked, so here I am.
Makes me feel like a kid again.
It brought my daughter and I closer together because it's something that was, because she goes to an art school. Actually, she goes to the same high school that I went to. And so she's very connected with all that. She's very connected with her friends that are in that. So having her dad connected with that just makes it even better. So it gives us another reason to talk to each other and hang out with each other.
I think my dad kind of just, since birth, made me like comic books because he's all into comic books and he's a comic book artist. So he does his own comic books here and stuff like that sold here. So I've always liked comic books. It's just a natural thing for me.
I think my older brother got me into it. He just started ordering them offline. I got into it. Then my cousin started showing me some stuff and I grew to love it.
I guess it's a community. It's like a family community. Because comic culture is really, when you get down to it, pop culture.
My favorite superhero is Superman. Basically, I can connect with him. And like, I share some kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of complicated.
Spider-Man, I've always been a big fan as a kid. I don't know, I've always followed the comics, loved the characters, Venom, all the superheroes. I always found the story very compelling, so.
Who is my favorite superhero? My favorite superhero is Batman. It's because Batman is smart. He is the world's greatest detective, supposedly. Even though you may think of Batman as punching out his adversaries, what he actually does is he outthinks them.
Favorite superhero, Spider-Man, since I was a kid. On all the comics that I was reading when I was younger, he was the one that I related to the most, being a kid and going to school and just dealing with, the trials and tribulations of everyday life. And for every time he gets lifted up, he gets knocked down twice, so you kind of start to really, it's easy to build a relationship with a character like that through the comic, you know what I mean?
In the early 1960s, you had Stan Lee, who had been working in comics since he was a teenager, since he'd been asked to start this new superhero book, which became the Fantastic Four, that he was going to write these characters as if they were real people. What would happen if real people with real personalities got superhuman powers and they existed in a world that was more or less like ours? And that was a breakthrough for comic books. It was everything, even Watchmen, that has come since then in mainstream comics, is a result of Stan's epiphany in 1961.
Like lately, the younger readers have been attracted to sort of dark stories, more realistic stories. That's what they're really into. So as an artist, if I want to get that audience, that's what I would do. I would go dark. I would go almost, to put in a different phrase, film noir. They like that, and they want it to be real. Like a lot of them, I also know, don't like the huge superheroes. They like people that actually look normal and are superheroes too. So they're into that realism.
Oh God, that's an easy question. As a childhood, I always liked Iron Man.
I'm really old school. Superman is my favorite superhero.
No, he's the strongest.
I guess Iron Man, probably.
I like the Flash.
Thor, Spider-Man.
V for Vendetta.
Iron Man.
Green Lantern.
It happens to be Deadpool.
Red Arrow.
I like Spider-Woman.
Dr. Manhattan.
Green Lantern.
People were saying, oh, well, you know, video games are going to knock out comics, you know, but they've done a good job, you know, especially the big two, meaning Marvel and DC, of making comics based on a lot of video game properties. So they're kind of crossing over a bit, and now with Hollywood getting involved.
Each his own. Comic books, I think my era growing up was the last stage before, like, you know, video games and PSPs and all that stuff came out. This was our escape. Now there's a million other escapes out there, and Xbox Live and Halo. You can play your comic books. So I don't think it'll be the same for him because it's more escape, but I would like it to be the same.
Pretty much starting in 2000 simultaneously is that you have all these movies based on comics. And there are various reasons for this. For one thing, CGI technology now makes it more possible to do movies about superhero characters and other fantasy figures from comics, put them on the screen believably and realistically than was ever possible before.
Also, as a person who loves film and superheroes, lately they've really been making the right connection only because they stuck to the basics of the superhero.
But you also have a whole lot of directors and screenwriters who have grown up reading the great comics of the last 20 to 40 years, and who take the medium seriously and who want to put these books on screen. So you have a Zack Snyder who wants to do Watchmen. You have a Sam Raimi who wants to put the Lee Ditko Spider-Man for the 60s on screen, and doesn't.
There's been comic book movies all along, but I feel like with Spider-Man in 2000, you know, it was, wow, okay, people saw Spider-Man and then they started coming back to the comic book store.
Recently, the Batman, The Dark Knight, those things grabbed the audience because that's what they like, and they stuck to the original story. Same with Superman Returns, same with Iron Man.
The two biggest grossing movies of 2008 were Dark Knight and Iron Man.
The web has changed comic books.
With the internet, we have the rise of web comics, and there are there's thousands and thousands of web comics. There are people I know who used to publish their own comic books and now now do their comics on the web instead. It's a wonderful way to get your work out there.
Because people, they're connecting on, say, MySpace, Facebook, No Prize, you know, there's that instant gratification now. You know, you can find certain issues that you want to read. You can read them on the web.
Marvel is doing its own web comics. DC has its Zuda line of web comics. It allows great potential for creativity, and an awful lot of the web comics are very personal comics. They're not superhero genre material. So web comics seems also to have made it possible to do a great deal more variety in the kind of material that can appear in comics that comics can do than perhaps major publishing companies would be ready for. You
know, MySpace and Dark Horse Comics and MySpace put out a trade now of comics that were strictly on the web. You know, web comics have made it a lot easier for, you know, budding creators to get a product out there. You know, there's certain creators like Stephen Lindsay who created Jesus Hates Zombies and does Inspector Ham and Eggs, which started as a web comic, but now it's in print.
Because comics is an art form, like any other art form. And what's been happening, especially since the turn of the 21st century, is that mainstream culture in America is beginning to appreciate comics and graphic novels more and more.
You know, I just adore the art form. It's very important to me. When you think about it as an art form, it's still relatively young because it's not as common as, say, television. Everybody's got a TV in their home. Not everybody has comic books in their home. So it's an industry that's still trying to learn how to reach certain audiences, you know, and I guess what they're doing is variety, you know.
What we have, looking back at comics over a century of comics in America, is that we have a long, rich history of good and often important work.